Hey guys, Alex returning to you for episode number 9 of Sports the Nemo Way. And this week will be Drew defending a player for the first time, and that player will be Paul Arizin, a guy we mispronounce his name every time we say it. You've probably heard us mention it a few times every episode of the show. But before we let Drew do his case, let's go over his career a little bit. The 6'4", 180-pound small forward played his entire career for the Philadelphia Warriors, winning one title and never winning an MVP. He's a 10-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA, 2-time scoring champion, and Rookie of the Year, with career averages of 22, 8, and 2 on 42% shooting. So, Drew, let's hear it.
All right, back to your one thing about what you just said, about him having no MVPs. Well, they actually didn't have MVPs yet for most of his career. They actually said one of his years, I think it was the 51-52 season, they said he actually probably would have won it. So I just want to say that real fast. And good. Okay, my opening statement about Paul Arizin. He changed the game of basketball. He invented the jump shot. The way people shoot today, if it wasn't for him, maybe we'd be shooting with two hands, or maybe someone else would. He can finish out the lane. I know you can't watch videos, but I watched some videos on him. He finished different layups and stuff, not just this fundamental right-handed, what you do when you're a little kid now. He was finishing a lot better than what people back then. He also shot 42% for back then in the 50s and 60s. You didn't see that very often, or at all. They were mostly shooting 20 or 30%. That's all I got from opening statement.
All right, well, thank you, Drew. As our resident old guy, and I know you aren't this old, but let's hear from Uncle Doug.
Okay. Well, I have to admit that I learned a lot when Drew brought this guy up. I am the old guy, and I have championed at least one old guy so far. And in future episodes, I have a couple more. But I really didn't know that much about Paul. Doing the research for this, I learned quite a bit. He was better than I thought. I didn't have him on my list. One problem with him, other than being the time period that he played, 6'4", small forward, today is going to be rough. He'd probably have to move to shooting guard, something like that. His rebound numbers were better than my bottom guys on my list, which were Dominic Wilkins and Adrian Dantley at small forward. So he did rebound better than them, but of course rebound numbers during that time period were probably a little higher than they are now. So that affects it some. But he scored less than both of them, at least a couple points less than Dominic and a point and a half less than Adrian. He also a little less on assists, steals and blocks because of the time period. Really couldn't compare those. I don't see you. I think it's great that we learned who the first guy with the jump shot, but he just didn't really make it. He's close. When I did some of the research for this, he got even closer because I did realize that he did get an NBA championship. So you have that. And in that NBA championship, he played really well. I don't know that they had an MVP then, but he was a pretty good player on that team.
They did not have a Finals MVP during that time period. I'll bring up his stats for the MVP for that series. Give me a minute.
All right.
He averaged 27 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 2.8 assists, and he only played 5 games.
Okay, so yeah, I have to admit that when I looked through all this, he looked pretty good. The two guys that I have ahead of him did not have titles, so at least made me think. So good job in educating me there.
I just want to point out the youngest guys pulling up big dude, old guys right now.
I'm not even going to make an argument. I just want to say something. Wade and I had this conversation, just the two of us, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, about how many guys in history have been the best player on a championship team. And I think we got to 33.
Yeah, because a lot of people repeat.
Because there's so many repeat guys. I mean, Jordan has 6, Kareem has a few, Bird has a few, Magic has a few, all those things.
Jordan has 6.
Yeah.
People like that really fun.
Right. It messes it up. Paul Arizin's one of those guys. He's the best player on a championship team.
That was actually the one of the people we came to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Kawhi is as well. Wait.
While we're talking about Kawhi,
I whispered it to him during your conversation.
Hey, while we're talking about Kawhi, let me turn my page real fast. Paul Arizin is 115 all-time in points. Kawhi is not 250. Paul Arizin is 177th in all-time rebounds. Kawhi is not in the 250. So that's what I have to say about Kawhi. That's why he's better than Kawhi.
Wow, I mean, he's coming at Kawhi like you came at Bird.
And you said Kawhi was best. You said Kawhi was best on one of his teams. They both won one. Well, Kawhi won 2 titles, but he's the best player on one team. So technically, they're even in that category.
Yeah, but Kawhi does have 2 titles and
Because
2
he had
Finals
Tim
MVPs.
Duncan, Tony Parker, Miles Ginobili.
You don't have enough knowledge to even name the other players on Paul Arizin's team.
Neither do you.
So you don't have an argument.
He's better. They both played 10 seasons. But Kawhi hasn't played the maximum amount of games. And as we can see, Paul's 115th all-time in points and 177th all-time rebounds. Kawhi is not even top 250. The list doesn't go that far down. But this isn't Kawhi. This is about Paul. So carry on, Alex.
All right, well, Ray, what you got to say, man?
Looks like he could have played 12 years, but 2 of them he was inactive because he was in military service.
Yeah, that was
I was getting ready to bring that
He
up
was
as
in-
well. Yeah.
That's his
Not
third or
in
fourth
the
season.
Marine Corps.
It was one of the
Korean War.
Korean
Yeah.
War.
He was a Marine in the Korean War, which is impressive.
Yeah, and then came back and played the rest of his years in the NBA. That's pretty cool. I look at his numbers; it's pretty solid. The points are pretty steady the whole time through. Rebounds are pretty good. Yeah, I mean, he's got a pretty solid stat line.
I think he's actually one of the better rebounding small forwards we have. I mean, there's a couple of big outliers like Elgin Baylor, who's like 13 a game, but I think he's one of the better small forward rebounders we have.
Was he in the high possession or
Yeah, he played in the 50s and 60s.
they're
so
running
yes.
and gunning and getting 130 possessions a game?
I mean, he won. I believe I remember this. He won the last title before the Celtics made their run with all those titles.
Yeah, because he won his title, but then he could never get back to the top because Bill Russell and his team were just too much. He couldn't beat all of them because he was by himself in Philadelphia until the very end. Then Wilt came in.
Okay, well, I'll say some things I got. First things first, I want to give credit where credit's due. Paul Arizin gave up 2 years of his career to the service of our country, and I refuse to hold that against him. And he brought the jump shot to the NBA. So, pioneer, great man. I just want to get that out of the way off the top. Now I'm going to go into negative things. I said a lot about this era during the Dolph Shays episode, so I don't want to repeat myself too much. But I feel like playing in this era, you need to be completely dominant to get my attention, and Arizin didn't really accomplish that. That being said, I do believe his game translates better than a lot of people from this time, or maybe all people at this time, due to his jump shot, like we just mentioned. And I actually was going to bring up the way he attacked the rim, like Drew said earlier. He had a big variety of ways he finished at the rim, which, again, is not like most players from this era. Most guys shot a push shot from mid paint, or just laid it up if there was nobody there. And Arizin had a lot of different ways to finish. But I know we brought up the military thing. I said I didn't want to use that against him. But the other thing he did was he retired to take a job at IBM because they quadrupled his salary.
Oh man.
So I'm not knocking him for taking the money and raising his family the way he wanted to raise them, but he clearly had time left because he averaged 22 and 6 the year he retired. But he just cut his career short, is what I'm saying. Which hurt his. I mean, imagine where he'd be on the career numbers list if he played more than 10 seasons.
I would say he didn't have longevity like some of these other players that we're talking about.
That's true. It's true. And on top of that, you have, because of the era, no fault of his, we have an incomplete picture stat wise Because, I mean, everybody knows we don't keep track of steals and blocks in that area. We also don't keep track of turnovers. We don't have threes. We, so there's
40 extra possessions. Like
Yeah.
the 90s and 80s.
right, absolutely that
So
too.
his 24 would be 18. His 8 would be 4. His 2 would be a half. That would be realistic stats compared to 90s possessions, 80s possessions.
I mean, I think I talked about it before.
It's a Dolph Shays argument.
Yeah, in the Dolph Shays argument, they broke down Russell when they accommodated for possessions as 12 and 12, not 18 and 24. Anyway, but then the last thing I did was I compared Paul Arizin, I'm sorry, to my 10 small forwards. So now we're adding him to my 10 to make 11. And two of those stats that we have available for him, assist and field goal percentage, Arizin ranks 11th. In free throw percentage, which he was a good free throw shooter, he ranks 6th. Also, in points, he ranked 7th. So, past half, on the second half of them. But in rebounds, he ranked 3rd. But then I have to add in there inflated time period. I guess my point is he's good. He's a Hall of Famer. He made the original top 50 in '96. He just missed my top 50 because of these things.
Just a quick question. How many of you knew about him before I brought him to the list?
Not a clue.
Nope, never heard of him.
Nope, I didn't know him.
I knew who he was. I didn't know a ton. I definitely didn't know the jump shot thing. That boggled my mind.
How the hell do you know about him? What did you read?
About who invented the jump shot. I really want to figure it out. And then I saw him when I was doing research for my list. He just kept coming in. I said, okay, I think he deserves to be on my list with all the stuff he's accomplished. And inventing the jump shot's a pretty big deal.
Okay, so
That is
I want to say this because I don't know that I'm right and I don't know that you're right. So what I read was that he didn't invent the jump shot. It was that he was the first person to do it in the NBA.
He was the best one they ever doing in the NBA.
No, he was the first
one?
He was the first one.
Okay.
But there were guys in the world jump shooting.
What are we categorizing the jump shot? Like 10 feet out? Like, I don't even know what we classify as the first jump shot, to be honest. Like, I'm asking. I don't know.
Right, yeah, it's a good question.
I'm puzzled. I don't know what exactly classifies the first jump shot shooter.
If you watch some of the old videos of the guys shooting the two-handed set shot,
yeah,
obviously it was different. And I was watching a video of Paul earlier, and one of the comments I made to Drew was he shoots like my dad.
Well, yeah, they jump differently.
Right,
Kicks his feet
my
up in
dad
the air.
could shoot the one-handed push, the two-handed set, and he also had a jump shot, and he kicked his feet up.
Yeah.
And I always laughed at that. Paul Arizin did the same thing. He kicked his feet up. So
Grandpa used to take me to the park, and Grandpa, when I used to always watch him in the summer, and I used to watch Grandpa shoot, and yeah, it was
He kicks
exactly
those
like he
feet?
just described. Yeah,
yeah,
and to me, I was like, "What the hell is this?" But
I know.
he was good at it though, so it was
Right.
It was effective. So
And my thing is Arizin is recognized as one of the most efficient players of this entire era, shooting 42%, which now we talk about 42% being inefficient. But we're talking about Hall of Famers, guys that are in some of our top 50s that played in the same era, shooting in the 30s.
But a lot of them brought more to the table than just scoring. Like for example, like the people that pop into my head: Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robinson, all did a lot more than just score the ball, and did a lot more better than Paul Arizin, Arizin, whatever the hell you want to call him. Well, I'm not arguing that. I'm not saying he's top 10. I'm pretty sure I'm at my 10th small forward. I don't know if I have him above 45. I don't think I do. I was just answering Alex's point. I wasn't.
No, what I was just saying was the jump shot the reason he was more efficient, is what I'm saying.
I don't know. I don't know if we have the answer, to be honest.
Oh, I don't have the answer.
I don't think any of us do. No.
Well, yeah. I mean, really, though, if you think about it, just playing basketball, a jump shot is going to be much harder to block because you got to have more room for that set shot.
Very true.
And so it's going to make it somewhat more efficient. Another thing that I was going to bring up, and I guess this is as good a time as any, because it's going to come into the old guy versus new guy debate a lot. They talk about the inflated possessions. You also need to think about, back in the old days, how many teams there were in the NBA.
12?
Much fewer, yeah.
I
Much
was
fewer
going
than
to
what we
say
have.
8. So
It was really somewhere around there.
Eight was early on, and then it expanded some. But when you're talking, take today's game, you've only got, say, 10 or 12 teams. Like right now, LeBron plays Giannis, a couple times a year?
Yeah, back then
twice a year. Yeah.
Last year, back then, he would have been playing them 10, 12 times a year because they were still playing 70 or 75 games. I think that's going to affect stats quite a bit. If you have to play the best teams and you're not playing the bottom dwellers 25% of your games,
that's a good point.
You got to play the really good guys.
Well, the teams are more stacked because you don't have to fill your roster with garbage guys at the end of your bench because there's not enough guys to go around. If there's only 8 or 10 teams, every guy on the roster is legit.
Right. Oh, yeah.
That's true.
I mean, you're going to take our 30 whatever and condense it down. So a whole lot of guys are losing their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's an argument you hear for Wilt and Russell a lot. So I believe it holds some merit.
I had a kind of a curious idea. He was the first big jump shooter in the NBA. Pretty much what we're getting at.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a very impressive accomplishment. But I was trying to think of something to compare him to. Like at that time when he first starts to do that, no one's ever seen it before, so he's going to put up these monster stats for a while until people figure it out. Like, I'm trying to compare it to something like when Mike D'Antoni first did the 7 seconds or less Suns. They blew up. They were putting up monster stats we'd never seen, and it took years and years and years for people to figure it out. Is him figuring out the jump shot before everyone else? Is it that big a deal, or is this kind of a minor deal? Or
I think it's a huge deal because, like Uncle Doug said, you have to play it completely different, and it takes trying to defend and block that shot to a whole new level because you watch those videos of guys shooting the two-handed set shot. If you could block their shot without leaving your feet from a distance because they're bringing it to their chest with two hands and kind of flinging it at the rim. First off, I'd say no wonder you shot 30% because how the hell do you consistently shoot that way? But second off, now you got a guy that's shooting the ball from above his head, and he's jumping in the air to do it.
Right. So did I make a good comparison?
No, I think it's a great comparison. It's something I didn't think of.
My first thought process was actually other sports. Was like Dan Faust and Kellen Winslow in the air raid offense. Right. They set all these crazy records. I think they had an all-time great wide receiver too. I can't remember his name, and they didn't lead to championships, but they set all these crazy records, and it took a long time for people to adapt to it. And the West Coast offense, Bill Walsh, Joe Montana, led to 4 Super Bowls, and Jerry Rice being the greatest receiver ever, setting records that today's people still can't even beat. Like, I don't know, but he probably had a similar effect, obviously in a smaller game as far as 5 starters, but then if you translate to a different era when everyone shoots jump shots, how does it work? How does it look?
Well, I think him shooting the jump shot and being able to finish with the rim in a multitude of ways.
No, it's a positive.
Yes, it's a positive. But also Uncle Doug brought up he's 6'4". He probably has to change positions. Yeah. He becomes a guard, then he has to handle the ball.
Everyone
all the
knows
time.
how to guard a jump shot in the future.
Right. So there's a lot of things that go into that. I think he translates to other eras, just probably not as a 23, 24, 22 point per game guy.
He can play, though. Yeah. He can play.
Yeah.
He can finish and he can shoot, which is probably your 2 most important things besides defense.
Again, this is one of those guys where I have some negative things to say about him. I can tell you why I don't think he should be on my list, but I don't have a problem with Drew putting him on his list because he is a Hall of Famer. He is a all-time great. He's a pioneer for the jump shot. You can't take those things away from him. He also won a title. Yeah,
that's title.
I mean, there's no Finals MVP to show that, or MVPs, and they say he probably would have got one. And he about got another one until Bob Pettit stole it from him. Just saying, guys.
Had to get that Bob Pettit in there, didn't you?
Hey, it was first ever MVP.
Was that a trivia question?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, it was.
His Arizin averaged 26. It was his best career year, but Bob Pettit averaged way more and beat him out.
So let me ask you this, Drew. You mentioned that his last few years in the league, where he was still really good and making all-star teams every year, he played with Wilt Chamberlain. And I believe there was at least 2 other Hall of Famers on that team. Now, I'm struggling to remember their names off the top of my head. I apologize.
One of them was John Falk, I think, or Falk.
Neil Falk, yeah.
Something like that.
Or Neil Johnston and something Falk.
Yeah, something like that.
Either way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 4 Hall of Famers on a team, one of which is, stat god Wilt Chamberlain. Is that a negative that they didn't win another championship?
Well, they played Bill Russell and all them there at the end of the year, and Wilt comes like the very end of the career. Like
what's the variant? Because I'm really asking, what is the variant? Because how many years did they play together?
I have to look it up. I'm not sure how many years they played together, but I just heard it was later on. I didn't see exactly how many.
Ray, can we basketball reference that real quick? I'm just asking because, I mean, I know the narrative is that Russell played, with so much better talent than Wilt and all these things. I don't necessarily believe that. We are literally talking about a team with 4 Hall of Famers on it playing against him. So, and this guy made your top 50. So I was just, I guess, challenging that and asking the question. I knew they played together, but I don't know how for long. For how long? Sorry. I mean, Arizin retired and after 62.
62, yeah. When did Wilt come in?
Okay, so they played together 3 years.
Played together for
3 years.
3 years.
So did the Celtics win all 3 of those titles?
That's a good question. I guess we're not prepared for this.
No, we're not. I'll look up where Boston won their titles.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that'll be helpful.
Because again, if you're looking, they might have 4 Hall of Famers on that team, but Boston probably had 5 or 6.
Yeah, I mean, those early teams had what? Cousy and
Russell,
Casey Jones, and Bill Sharman.
What about when did Sam Jones come in?
He came in late because Casey and Russell are the only ones that are there for all of them. And Cousy retired after 6. Havlicek came in later.
Right.
Heinsohn retired after 8 seasons.
Yeah.
So Sam came in later, but I'm not sure how much later.
Okay.
All right, I have it pulled up. They won in 59 60, 60 61, 61 62, 62 63. So that would be
right. So
3 to 4
Celtics
years they were
won
together.
all 3 of those, yeah.
Yeah, they were on the same side because it said after Paul won that first one, he said he can never get past the Celtics again to get back to the finals.
So was Philly in the different conference then, or did they play each other in the Eastern Conference Finals every
I
year?
think they were in the Eastern Conference with each other then.
And I don't know how many teams were in the league at that
Yeah,
point.
I'm not sure how many.
That's true too. I'm not sure how many teams were in the league. I know it wasn't a ton. I thought it was 8. Wade said 12. Both of them make sense, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know that the league started with like 8, but it went to 12, I think, pretty quickly thereafter. And so, I mean, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's. I remember my dad talking about the Celtics playing the St. Louis Hawks. And that's where I heard about Bob
Pettit. The man.
And so a bunch of those teams back in those days.
So is that what is the answer to my question for you, Drew? Is that it?
Can you repeat the question again, please? Sorry.
Is it a negative that a team with 4 Hall of Famers didn't get it done?
You're probably correct. For how many times the Celtics won, you think maybe they could win maybe 1, 2 more times, get up to 3. I'm not saying they beat the Celtics every year, but you're probably right. They probably should have won more than just 1, especially when they add Wilt to the team. You're probably correct.
Yeah, because the championship was pre-Wilt.
Yeah, Wilt wasn't on the team, so they won it without him. So yeah, you're probably correct. They probably should have got another one, if not 2 or 3 more.
All right, fair enough. So do we want to move into closing statements, or does anybody else have anything to say?
I think the only other thing I have to say is I watched this jump shot, and the form of that, it kind of looked like when you've had enough pull-ups. Well, when he went up, it looked like he was kipping at the end.
Yeah, trying to get up for that last
Yeah,
rep.
trying to kip up for that last one.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to put it, Ray. I never thought of it that way.
But I mean, you got to start somewhere, I guess.
Hey, if you're the first, it's do whatever you want, I guess.
Yeah,
But
for real.
it worked for him. I mean,
Yeah, we're talking about him shooting, better than most guys of his era. If not, I mean, I don't think they kept track of field goal percentage titles at that time, but I'm sure he has a couple because, like I said, he's better than a lot of guys.
Right, yeah.
So, closing statements?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
All right, I'll go ahead. Like I said, Drew, I don't like this era of basketball.
yeah.
But I don't really have a big problem with Paul Arizin. Sorry, we're all struggling to say his name. Like I said, I think he translates better than a lot of guys. But I kind of did a breakdown of how he compared to the rest of my guys, and I just thought he fell short. But I will say I did learn quite a bit about him and what he did after having to research him. I think the only reason I knew who he was is because he was the answer to questions on Sporkle quizzes I take sometimes. Yeah, he had a solid career, and I think if he maybe would have played 15 years in the league, maybe this conversation is different. But he took a job at IBM,
Who blames him? He tripled his salary.
which is ridiculous when you think about today.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, LeBron's going to triple his salary by taking a job at IBM. Like, no, not going to happen.
You're going to be a billionaire, LeBron.
Right. All right. Anybody else?
He didn't quite make my list, but I have to admit that you really opened my eyes. I didn't really know anything about him before. And doing the research after you brought him up, pretty amazing career. Again, had he not cut it short, not just for the leaving early, but the 2 years he took off, which were probably prime years to be in the military, might have bumped those stats up enough. It's a pretty impressive guy, and thank you for educating me on that.
Never thought I'd educate my dad on old basketball players. Wade, Ray.
I think I'll mirror Doug with thanks for educating me. Never heard of the guy at all. He would have been just a memory in the wind to me if you wouldn't have brought him up. But, yeah, stats are great. I don't know what else to say. Horrible-looking jump shot, but, I mean, you got to start somewhere.
I don't really think I have too much to add as far as what Alex and Uncle Doug and Ray have already said. He was kind of he was a pioneer. He accomplished a lot of good things, but I had to compare him to Adrian Dantley, kind of like Uncle Doug, and Paul Pierce, which I think if you do the inflation for the era and go with accomplishments, I think my other guys are a little more impressive. But I never heard of the guy before. Not a chance. I said this off air, I know, but we all submitted our lists. I texted Alex. It's like, who the hell is Paul A? Like, who is this on Drew's list? Who is this guy? But yeah, it was kind of cool to figure out who he was. But it was a pretty decent argument. I liked it.
I'm not trying to start another argument, but Paul Pierce and Paul Arizin have the same amount of titles, and I just want to say that.
Okay,
You
that's
just
fine,
said your
that's fine.
guys.
Hmm.
And
We'll get to
where's
Paul Pierce.
Adrian Dantley at? 1 second. Let me find him in my list.
Well, I believe Dantley has 2 titles
He does.
with the Pistons.
And he's one of the best.
Oh no, wait,
scorers
no,
ever.
that's
No.
Aguirre. Sorry,
I was like,
Dantley.
has
Dantley
0
doesn't have any titles.
So
Sorry.
he does average more points. Yeah, he does do that.
In a much harder era.
Well, yeah.
We won't get into all that
No,
yet.
yes, I
Make
know
your
it's-
closing statement,
I know
Drew.
it's a much harder era. I'm not trying to argue that. Yeah, well, I'll just lead into my closing statements from here. I know it's not the best era to play basketball. It might be the most horrible era to ever play basketball, and maybe right up next to right now. But he did accomplish stuff. He got a title. I mean, 2 MVPs weren't even around yet, so only 1 Finals MVP. But we don't know. He might have won a couple more MVPs in the 2 years when he served our country. He might have got 2 MVPs. We just don't know when he didn't serve then. And obviously, we don't know how good of a defensive player he was without steals and blocks, so we don't know. Or turnovers. Don't know how many times he turned over the ball. We just don't know. And, I mean, he's top 200 in points and rebounds, which 2 of the 3 stats they kept track of back then. So And then, obviously, he pioneered the jump shot, so I just thought he deserved to be in the top 50. I'm not saying top 10, top 5, but I think he's a top 50 player of all time.
I think it's a good way to put it, Drew. Thank you. And I guess I'll go with what a couple of you guys said. Thanks for educating us, Drew, even though you're the youngster of the group. All right, so I guess that makes it trivia time.
Hey, I just want to add one more thing. What did he do at IBM that he left in the NBA for?
He was he wasn't like lower level, like
pre-computers, I would think.
I don't know what his job was, but he was like a manager at IBM. I actually watched a documentary on it to educate myself on him a little bit. He left to run something at IBM. I'm sounding uneducated here, so I apologize.
I was just curious because I know it was kind of early in the game for like laptops and big massive computers and stuff. So I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what IBM did at that time. All right, so now it's trivia time. And anybody want to go first?
Yeah, well, I actually have my question right here ready to go.
Oh, Drew's on top for this episode.
All right. Who averages the most points per game for all the finals they've ever played?
So who has the top points per game in finals history?
Yeah. Like of all time, combining all their games together. Like not just one series, but all of them together. So like one guy who played one series or one guy who's played 11.
Rick Barry.
I'll say Rick Barry.
I'll say MJ.
Yeah, let's go Jordan.
Rick Barry.
That's right.
Oh, good job,
I've already
guys.
written my argument for Rick Barry, so that's actually on my.
I just watched like a 20-minute YouTube documentary on him, so I knew that stat.
It was 36.3.
Wow.
Yeah, here was a score.
I got
Sure.
one. Am I good? What college did Carmelone go to?
I believe it was Louisiana Tech.
I was going to say Louisiana Tech.
Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, let's say Louisiana
It
Tech.
is Louisiana Tech. God damn you, Uncle Doug.
I knew it, though. I was going to say it if you didn't. So.
All right, you want me to go next?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Single game scoring. We know that Wilt put up 100. The number 2 on the list is Kobe at 81. Number 3 is Wilt at 78. Okay, and then Wilt also scored 73, but another player did. Who was the other player that scored 73?
David Robinson.
Michael Thompson.
Go MJ.
I'll go MJ too.
Actually, it was a combination of you two. David Thompson.
I knew it. I knew it was David Thompson. No, I was sitting over here going, I said the wrong Thompson. Oh, man. I knew it.
Didn't David Robinson score like 70 or 71?
72.
Oh, my God.
72.
Get out of here.
Yeah, it's amazing when I looked that up at how many times Wilt is on the list. I mean, he
crazy.
scored 70 like a bunch of times.
I'm so mad because I was just watching that 80-point or 81-point Kobe game the other day, and they kept showing the points the whole time.
Yeah, the
Like
anniversary
the
of
list.
it was the other night,
Yeah.
so they played it a bunch.
Yeah.
You or me, Ray?
I'll go ahead and go.
All right.
Which player did Los Angeles Lakers give up for Kobe Bryant?
Vlade Divac.
I was going to say Elgin Campbell.
I was going to say Divac.
Had the yeah.
The correct answer is Vlade. He likes to party.
All right.
What Elgin Campbell hung out there?
I thought. I don't know. I don't know where I got that, but I thought it was. I had it in my head anyway. All right, so that leaves me. There have only been 5 quadruple doubles in NBA history, but one player has 2 of them. Who has 2?
Olajuwon.
That's how I'm going with Olajuwon. I think he's the most recent.
Yeah, I'm going
I'll
to
say
say
Elijah one.
So Elijah on it up.
It is Olajuwon.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're looking at
No, I knew that one.
scores. So after this week, episode 9, the scores are as follows. Ray has 8. Doug and Alex both have 14, and Wade and Drew each have 17. So Drew and Wade are still tied at the top and extended their lead over Doug and I, unfortunately. So that'll be that for this episode. Please tune in next week for our episode on the Chief, Robert Parrish. Ray will be handling that business again. And we appreciate your listening, and please keep listening. Thanks.